Hello from our Minnesota farm. On the farm we have different ways of hauling water, transporting water and chemicals, fertilizers and so forth. I used to have an open trailer, basically a tank sitting on a flatbed, one inductor on it. I decided to do something a little different with a little bit more water capacity, especially when we want to use more gallons per acre out there. And so I did a little bit of research of what I wanted to do. I thought I'd go with another larger flatbed with 2 tanks on it like I had. However, I had one of the guys that I know kind of talked me into doing a reefer type trailer like this one. And turns out I'm kind of glad I did, because everything's inside this way. It's all contained. I think there's a few drawbacks. I like the accessibility of coming at it from any direction I wanted on the flatbed style. This one, you can only load from the back and you have to just kind of move your stuff forward. And so it's a little bit unhandier that way, but I ended up liking it pretty well. And I'll just kind of show you how I set this up. What I did is I found myself a trailer that I thought would be good first, that would work well for me. And this one I thought was long enough for me for 2 tanks. I'm an average size farmer. If you're a larger farmer, you'd want a little longer trailer yet with another tank. I think you'd prefer 3 tanks then, but for my size operation, I thought 2 tanks would do me. And then I went with an extra inductor, so I have 2 inductors. So, and I set this up myself, and I did it pretty reasonable. This thing didn't cost me a lot. If you had to move from one field to the next constantly, I would have spent a little bit more money. I would have put in at least 1 more inductor, probably had a longer trailer for one thing, and then had a coil reel, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But this one here, I just set it up. I wanted it economical. So where I bought the trailer, I bought most of the equipment in here as well. And I just talked it over with the guy. I said, this is what my needs are. And I only have to fill at a home farm and a west farm. That's it. So I don't have to move a lot. And so I said, what's the most reasonable way I can do this and yet make it really handy? This is what I came up with. In the back here, I've got 2 2,000 gallon tanks, and I wouldn't want to do anything less than that, but that worked out really well. I don't have a fancy manifold on for transferring water in any direction. I did it very simply. And I'll show you that in the back here in just a moment on the front tank. But in the back tank here, each tank has its valve that coming out of the tank, and then this is my simple manifold system here. Now I'll show you. Okay, this back tank comes in here, front tank comes in here. I can shut it off here for the front tank. I can shut it off over here for this tank. That's important because if you're not sitting on perfectly level ground, one tank's gonna empty before the other. This gives me control of both tanks from right here. And then this is your main valve that goes for your water supply to your sprayer, inductors, and my clean motor. Now I kept my water pump from the old trailer here, and this does not have electric start on it. Some people set them up so this would have electric start as well. I don't. This one starts really easy. However, if you're going to have a separate motor in here for clean water, highly recommend putting yourself in an exhaust pipe that goes down underneath the floor. I'm really glad I did that. Otherwise, you're going to be breathing in fumes in here, which you certainly don't want to do. And that worked out really well. Also, you got to have some way of trying to change oil well in here, and so I put a drain line on this pump just like I have on the motor back there as well. So changing oil on it, I don't have to remove that pump off of the trailer to do that. I'll just go through with you on the clean rinse first here. Reason why I have this motor is because I can run clean water through here, and I have each valve on top of each inductor here rinses the inductor, and that works out quite nicely. I'll show you the inside, because each fill I'm able to actually rinse out the inductor good so that you don't leave any chemical behind. This one here I use for AMS as well, because AMS, as you know, goes in there dry, and I then add up here with this valve water, but this one is under high pressure as well, so I'll just leave that thing running sometimes while I'm running the AMS through the system and out to the sprayer. And so that worked out really well doing it that way. Also, this one has a bottle rinse in here. I am really glad I added that. I did not have a bottle rinse on the other one. It takes a lot of time to rinse out all those jugs, and this one saved me a lot of time doing that. So the jug rinse really works out good. Another thing I use is these anti-vortex plates, because as you know, you gotta run a lot of clear water. It wants to go in circles and sucks in air, and of course then your pump starts sucking air instead of water. It doesn't like that, and so those anti-vortex plates, I have one in each inductor, really works out well. So this one runs my bottle rinse, and of course the top two are your inductor rinses. Keeps those inductors clean, make sure all the chemical is through there. So that's what I put in, just a simple clean water rinse, and I run it off a separate pump. Some people do try to run it off the same pump. Problem with that is that when you're filling chemical in, you can't use clean water back to your inductors. This way, sometimes I'll have this rinse running while the chemical's running through the system out to the sprayer. And so that's a real advantage of having that. Plus, I also put a spray hose on here with a separate valve to open and shut that as well. But then you got an extra hose there in case you want to clean things off, or even rinse out if you need to rinse out your sprayer or something. That line will run way out there. So my main pump that I use for filling the sprayer and for running water, and if you had fertilizer too, sometimes I'll use it for even soy grain and to fill up the planter tanks and so forth. This one has electric start, and that I would say is a necessity if you got a trailer type like this. So I have the battery mounted right here, and I have everything really handy here. So all I have to do from the outside is turn it on. Got my choke, throttle, and so forth. The only thing I would do differently, and I tried to work with this different directions here, is I would have had this motor turned because it gives you a little bit more room in here, especially when you're loading chemical and stuff. That'd probably be the only reason I would do that, but I did it this way because it seemed like the best way to do it because of the way I'm attaching a hose here. If I would have turned it 1/4 of a turn, I would have to run the hose right over the fuel tank. That didn't seem like it was going to work very well. And again, on this motor, make sure you vent the exhaust down through the bottom of the trailer once again. That really worked out nice. I didn't know how that would work because these motors vibrate pretty good, but that seemed to work really well. Even if I would have had that motor turned 1/4 of a turn, that exhaust would have still been going off this way. It can kind of get trapped in the trailer here. So any way you look at it, I really think it was a good idea to vent that. So that's basically the general setup here. And then of course over here, you can have all your chemicals lined up and any other adjuvants that you may need. Another nice thing I like about this trailer is for early mornings or even late into the night, it's got plenty of lights in here to work. So you can see everything in here, what you're doing. Even if you got to fill up water early in the morning, it's still dark, you got plenty of lights in here to work and operate. So I'll go over and I'll show you how I fill it. Now I can fill it at home with a garden hose, but I can also fill it in town very quickly. One added thing I'll tell you before I leave, I was lucky that this ladder, it's aluminum ladder, so it's real light, came with the trailer. That was really nice. Easy up and off. Otherwise, a person should build in a permanent ladder back here. So before I get to attaching the hose on there, I'll show you the fill. I have a side door, and I tried to figure out the easiest way to do this. But as you can see, I have the valve up here on this tank, and I put this on here basically only for filling the tanks. Because I showed you in the front of the tanks here, I can control this tank from up there. But I had to have a way to control it back here when I'm filling them. So if I go into your local dealer and he's offering water under high pressure, I hook it up to here. If I had to do anything over again, I would have put another valve right on here. However, the way I'm doing it, it doesn't seem like it's absolutely necessary. I think it would have been a little handier. But I thought about it at the time, but I'm a little bit cramped in here, as you can see. There isn't a lot of room to put a valve in. I could have set it back a little bit more or connected it all together with here with two valves and then one going out this way. I had thought of that as well, but I haven't used it a lot. I've actually only used this twice in town under high pressure. The rest of the time, I just filled the tanks with a garden hose at home. And when I do that, both tanks fill evenly. However, under high pressure, they don't. Under high pressure, this one fills faster than that one. So it works out good to have a valve here for that. Because when this one's full, I close off this valve. And when that one's full, I shut off the water. Close the other valves and then disconnect the hose. So yeah, having an extra valve here could have helped, and it would have been kind of nice. But for the few times that I fill up under high pressure, this has been working fine for me. And it's very accessible here. It's easy to get to. Now, for connecting my hose, if you have to move from field to field again, just get a real hose. You know, I think would be the easiest. You can put on even a longer hose and hang it here and go right into the side of your trailer, hook it up direct. I had thought about doing that, but I came to the conclusion that because I only have two places that I fill, at home and at a West Farm, I decided just to make it very simple and reasonable. Hang my hose on the side, and I don't need a real long hose. If you needed anything longer than this, then I think I would have done it a little differently. But I take off the hose and I attach it right to here. When I'm done, I again take the hose off and I just put it up here on the side. Because I don't have to go from one place to the next, that works. If I did, I'd say it isn't going to work real well. Then I think, again, coming back to this pump, if I would have turned this pump, I would have gone with this straight out the side of the wall here, had a permanent attachment, another elbow, and then just run a hose and hung it along the side here. I'm actually pretty happy I did it this way. It's very simple, uncomplicated. This hose isn't too long to handle. It's very simple and easy that way. Put it here, it's kind of out of the way. So I guess I like this setup, and I don't think there's anything about it that I would want to change or that I feel I could change. It's about the best I could come up with without spending a lot of money on it. So this turned out to be very reasonable. Matter of fact, so reasonable that when I sold my other trailer and my tank, it more than paid for my whole setup here with new tanks, 2 inductors, 2 motors, and this has turned out to be very handy. Thanks again for joining us at our Minnesota farm.